I think few people would argue the murders didn't start in the third floor bedroom. Something interacted violently with those cups and they knocked them off the table. Fair enough?
Right.
One might speculate that Xana running from the kitchen around the living room, one might speculate she knocked those cups off the table.
And here we go again with this nonsense. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you.
Listen to Pavarotti. Can I be your superhero?
Hello, welcome to The Revealing. I'm your host, Pavarotti, and I'm here to discuss the Idaho 4 case. And now, you know, I'm at an impasse because while I both believe that Whitcomb and team are all working together trying to get a new trial for Bryan Kohberger, I'm in the same respect, I cannot help but call out the BS because I've watched him now on the episode with Dax Shepard and now on the interview with the custody queens, which once again, I have to watch the interview with the custody queens and listen to their, why was Jack D cleared? Give me a break. It's all Jack D and the frats questions from these folks. I mean, give me a literal break. I mean, sorry, but they're nothing more than a bunch of clickbaiters that can't seem to get past Jack D and the frats. Why was Jack D, and then Whitcomb just perpetuates it. Well, Jack D was eliminated because Bryan Kohberger was brought into the case. No, it wasn't. Jack D was eliminated because he gave his phone, gave his buccal swab, gave his fingerprints later on, and they compared him to every piece of evidence in the case, and he didn't match any of the evidence. That's why Jack D was cleared. That, and they knew the kid didn't do it. Give me a break. Why was Showalter and all them cleared? Same reason, because they compared them to all the evidence in the case, and they didn't match it. Once again, I watched custody queens go through an entire interview with Whitcomb and never once asked him about the L5 fingerprint, unknown male B, unknown male D. Give me a break. It's like watching paint dry with these folks and the most ridiculous clickbait questions you could possibly ask Whitcomb and him dodging every real question like it was a fastball from Mizorowski at 105 miles an hour. But they continue to bring up this scenario and not acknowledge all the physical evidence in the case and what it shows as it relates to Kaylee. And they want to replace Kaylee with Maddie, and they want to change history to do it. And I just am not going to sit back and let them do it. If these folks will come out and address the actual evidence as it relates to the crime scene, what the witnesses say, and then explain a way around it, I'll be cool with that. But as long as they want to change evidence, ignore evidence, I'm never going to be cool with it. And I'm always going to point it out, and I'm always going to make them look pretty dumb in the process. So hold on to your hats, folks. Here's Pov's way of bringing up the obvious, I guess, as it relates to this subject, because I'm not going to let it die. Whether they are misinterpreting, misrepresenting, or just flat out trying to misdirect, I don't know. But sooner or later, they're going to realize I'm not going to go away. Well, here's where I absolutely say the experts did a great job and are blind as bats at the same time, in the same breath. But because Nodal did such a good job on all of the dimensions of everything in the entire house, I can now take his scale and everything that he's done in the 3D scans, take the exact measurements of Maddie's bed, and I know now I can verify with certainty that Maddie's bed was a full-size bed, 4.5 by 6'3". So Maddie's got a full size, but I can also, based on those same measurements, determine that Kaylee's got a queen size bed. So for them to not ask themselves, why would Kaylee and Maddie be down in Maddie's room in a bed that was a full size bed when Kaylee's big queen size bed is sitting there all comfortable, is beyond me. But I keep hearing these so-called experts and people trying to help the case continue down this same path, and I've got to attack it every time I hear it because it doesn't hold water.
All this happened.
Okay, so here's what she saw.
Yeah.
So the police arrived and they said, what happened? And she said that she woke up at about 4:15 in the morning and she heard one of the women victims in the house going up the stairs. Now, her bedroom, the wall to her bedroom with the door is in a slight hallway, which goes into the kitchen.
Okay.
Directly adjacent to the wall of her bedroom is a staircase going up to the third floor where the two other women were found dead.
Okay.
It goes up and then it comes back. It's a double back staircase. And you go up that staircase, and she told police that she heard one of the victims, turned out to be another one of the victims, with a dog listening to loud music, to the point where she said, I think they're wearing Doc Martens boots because she could tell by how strong the footsteps were. So it was very detailed information.
And she interpreted it as one of the roommates, but you would definitely argue it was Brian's.
No.
boots.
Well, great question. But the reason I said that is because she originally said it was one of the victims, and it turns out that she changed it to one of the other victims.
But it turns out she did not change it to one of the other victims. She kept it the same all the way through the Aaron Williamson forensic interview on December 1st. And she even testified in the grand jury hearing of the same thing, that it was Kaylee that she heard. But just to point out, on December 1st, just so nobody's confused, I woke up, Dylan says. So obviously I fell asleep for a little bit. Then I woke up around between the range of like 4 and 4:20, somewhere in there, maybe 4:10. He said 4:15. She said 4:10. We had this like flat blaster speaker that's Hunter's, Ethan's triplet, who, he usually would bring it over to our house, like parties and stuff. I could hear it was Kaylee. I could hear it was Kaylee. I think she was singing, and I could hear like Murphy's paws, like just prancing around. And I'm pretty sure they were just like dancing and singing. And I woke up and I remember looking at my phone, and it was like somewhere around 4, but obviously before 4:30. I don't remember how long I heard her playing music before, and then I heard her walk upstairs because I hear her shoes walk upstairs, and I could hear Murphy, like his paws going upstairs. And I feel like when she got to like the middle top of the stairs, she said, someone's here. But it wasn't like a scream. It was like frantic, like, oh my gosh, like someone's here. And it was like talk. It was like talk in between yelling, and I could hear it. Bethany didn't hear it. I don't know if anyone else heard it. And then I just heard like fast paced, like stomps going down the stairs, and it just stopped. So this is what she said throughout the entire thing. And she never wanes from the fact that the person that she heard was Kaylee. So citing that Dylan changed her story, that it was not Kaylee, it was Xana, who was in the living room playing with Murphy, listening to music, going upstairs, screaming someone's here and running downstairs, is a farce. And if they can't understand it by this point, then they're either dense or they're doing it on purpose.
Because two women died in bed on the third floor, probably were found and attacked and killed in that bed, never got out of the bed. The other woman was probably Xana Kernodle, was probably attacked in or around the kitchen, chased across the living room, down a hallway into her room, where she died on the floor of her bedroom after an extraordinarily violent struggle. And her boyfriend was found in bed next to her, killed also.
Once again, until these folks address the actual scene and the actual evidence, I'm going to continue to push back, because everything that they assume about that situation that can't be true takes them and focuses them on so many things wrong in this case. And I just got to point it out. So first of all, let's point this out. If it is Xana in the living or in the kitchen with Murphy and not Kaylee in the living room with Murphy, then how does the ninja guy come through the rear sliding door with Xana in the kitchen with Murphy? How does he come in and get past her and get upstairs to attack the two girls in the bed? Number one, that kind of takes that whole scenario and throws it out. So one thing that's excellent about these measurements that Nodal took allows me to really graph out every inch of this crime scene and what is true and what is false. But based on what Whitcomb is saying, he's saying that Xana was in the kitchen, and then Dylan heard her go upstairs, scream someone's here, and then run back down the stairs. The perp would have been chasing her And the perp would have chased her all the way into the living room, around the pong table, around the corner, all the way to her bedroom. All of this with Xana running a total of 32 feet from right here, I have surmised, with a blood alcohol concentration of 0.229. So she can not only outrun this very nimble attacker, but she can do it carrying 32 feet around obstacles, around corners, and she is more than twice the legal limit to operate a motor vehicle. Yeah, right. Then there's this. In the living room, there is more than 14 different blood stains noted in the area. Of those 14, 5 of them were tested for DNA evidence. Of the 5 tested, not one came back to Xana Kernodle. So there is obviously an attack happening in this area right here, as Whitcomb claims it's Xana being attacked. Yet, if Xana's being attacked, why does Xana's blood not show up anywhere in all of the blood stains? Then there's this. The irregularly shaped diluted stain on the surface of the table, placard 39, comes back to Kaylee Gonzalez, but he also talks about discolored areas. Discolored areas around this single diluted deposit and on a potato chip bag near the table, and other individual drops on the table surface were not specifically tested. Well, I think if you would have tested them, it would have come back to Kaylee, because everything else came back to Kaylee. So you've got blood that he, by the way, mentions arrives from the south to land on the surface of the table. This is south over here, so blood's coming from this way, hitting the table, but blood's also going all over this bag of chips over here. And then blood's going over the table here and over here. And then blood's going all over everything else. So if this is Xana being attacked right there, then there should have been some of Xana's blood, but it wasn't. It was just Kaylee's. So once again, But then there's this, right? Xana supposedly has her plate of food because she's in the kitchen. That's why they surmise she's in the kitchen, is she's got her plate of food. So not only did she run 32 feet, she ran 32 feet going around obstacles, around corners with a blood alcohol of 0.223, with being attacked by somebody that doesn't get any of her blood anywhere, and she doesn't spill not one fry out of her plate on the way, yet she's able to maneuver carrying her plate of food right into the bedroom and set it on the floor. But not only that, apparently along the way, she was able to eat most of that food, because the only thing left was her curly fries that are scattered all over the room. Then we have got this to consider. Xana Kernodle had received sharp force wounds and was found on the floor in her second floor bedroom. Bloodstains on surrounding surfaces indicate she was mobile between the side of the bed and her final position while low to the floor. Her location at the initiation of the attack is unknown, according to the experts in the case. Her location at the initiation of the attack is unknown. However, they go on to say her blood was not identified beyond the interior threshold of her bedroom door. So the experts say that her location at the initiation of the attack is unknown. I would say it is known, because her blood is found inside the interior threshold of the door, and that's where all of her blood is found. So that is the likely place where she was attacked initially, in my humble opinion. However, since she doesn't have any blood outside the interior threshold of her bedroom door, nobody can say that Xana Kernodle was anywhere outside here when the attack happened. The only people you could possibly say was attacked out here, because somebody was Kaylee Gonzalez, because her blood's found everywhere. And by the way, when you put this together scientifically and you look at the physical evidence, from the third floor you can see there are 7 transfer stains leading down the stairs to the first floor. Number 41, the largest transfer stain, belongs to Maddie Mogan, and only Maddie Mogan. And the experts say that an object or person bearing her blood made contact with a wooden topper. So if you've got somebody walking up the stairs and yelling, "Someone's here," and that person starts chasing that person down the stairs and they've attacked Maddie, that's why you find Maddie's blood transferred as he's chasing her, because he hasn't attacked Kaylee yet. You don't find Kaylee's blood until he catches up to her right here. And then Kaylee's blood is spattered all over the pong table, tested, verified. It doesn't stop there, though. It starts with just Kaylee's blood here, but because that same attacker has continued to attack Kaylee all the way out to here, then you see a lot of spatter that has a mixture of Kaylee and Maddie's blood, but not an even mixture. It's mostly Kaylee's blood, 90%, and it has 10% Maddie's blood mixed in because he already had Maddie's blood on him when he started attacking Kaylee. Now, you know, I believe another perp was at the bottom here, and the reason there's just Kaylee's blood in the initial deposits is because he hit her with blunt force, causing that blood to spatter. That's why she has blunt force injuries, and that's why her injuries differ from all of the other victims in the case. It's not because she was a target, it's because she was running and she was hit with blunt force downstairs, and then somehow she's got back up into the room, put into the bed with Maddie. There's your staging. But an incident obviously continues to happen, producing the mixture of the blood after the initial attack here. The incident continues here as the blood is spattered all over the room. The other thing to note, when they get Xana and Kaylee to the autopsy table and all of the apparel that they had on them at the time, and you hear Whitcomb mention, Dylan said that it sounded like somebody was running up the stairs with boots on. Everybody says, well, it couldn't have been Kaylee because she wasn't wearing boots. Well, I can tell you it couldn't have been Xana either, because Xana was barefoot. Xana was found in the bed or on the floor barefoot, with wearing only her sweatshirt and thong style underpants. No socks, no shoes. So certainly you couldn't claim it was Xana wearing boots running up the stairs. Kaylee, on the other hand, she only had one sock on, right? Black graphic t-shirt, black plaid fleece pajama bottoms, and a gray sock partially on the left foot, nothing on the right foot. But we can all see that sock right there in the living room, and you can see that big gray portion of it right there. I know you can. So if she's got one sock on and the other one's right here, gray portion in the living room, then I think we can greatly determine, based off of everything we just looked at, the person attacked in the living room was Kaylee, not Xana. No evidence whatsoever for Xana. Now, what they'll try to claim is Xana was in the kitchen with her phone attached to this Bluetooth speaker, listening to the music, right? Well, you hear Kaylee, or hear Dylan describe in her interview that Ethan's triplet brother brings his flat blaster speaker over, and she heard Kaylee in the living room with Murphy playing music from that flat blaster speaker. She wouldn't say flat blaster speaker in the living room if it was a round speaker in the kitchen. These kids these days know the difference between a flat blaster speaker and a round speaker like you see in this kitchen, because number one, they had these round speakers, as you can see, all over their house. She would know if that music was coming from the kitchen over here by the window or if it was coming from the living room. Now you say, yeah, Pop, but we can't find any flat blaster speaker in the living room. So it must have been that one in the kitchen. And I just refer you to what I've contemplated this entire time since we got the video release, and that's the fact that somebody drove up in this black Ford Explorer at 429, parked it in the driveway, and it never left. I don't know who showed up with it, but if that person went in the house like I suspect he did, I can't put it past him not to grab his flat blaster speaker if he did that. Let me know your thoughts. One thing's really clear when I listen to Whitcomb and the interviews that he gives. There's a couple of things that he prefaces before he talks about them. And it seems to be the only time he uses these prefaces is when he's talking about these specific subjects. And one of them is for sure Kaylee and Maddie in the bed, and the other one is Xana in the kitchen. It's the only two times I see him do it. He prefaces anytime he talks about those two things with a statement. And that statement that he uses every time is, everybody in the world, I think, would agree with this. Kaylee and Maddie were attacked in the bed first. Everybody in the world would agree with this. Xana was in the kitchen and she was chased to the bedroom. Every time he starts talking about those subjects, he starts with those words, as if to say, don't dare disagree because you'd be the only one in the world to disagree. And it seems to work real well with these people that interview him because they don't seem to dig in at all once he says that. Yeah. Buddy, you can bet you I would. I'd say not everybody in the world agrees. In fact, I disagree entirely because here's what I think the evidence shows. And until we can address it properly, I'll never think otherwise. So why don't y'all address the evidence properly? Why don't you talk about the evidence properly? If you've got, now I could agree. Yeah, it sounds to me like at least Maddie was attacked first upstairs, because if you're basing it based on just the blood evidence, well, you got evidence of somebody going down the stairs and tracking her blood down from the second floor to the first floor, because it's clearly on the handrail there and it comes back to just Maddie, no Kaylee. So I can agree with that because you've got a blood trail. And then I can agree with something happened at the bottom of the stairs. I can't agree with it being Xana because you never see any of Xana's blood and all the other reasons why it can't be Xana. But I can agree something happened at the bottom of the stairs because then the blood trail changes from Maddie all of a sudden to Kaylee. Somebody is assaulted right there and their blood goes over the pong table. They test the blood. Oh, it's Kaylee's. And then from there, I can agree something else happened because as it progressed on, all of a sudden a lot of blood was cast off on surfaces. And it just so happens that blood wasn't Xana's and it wasn't Maddie's. It was Kaylee's with just a tad bit of Maddie's in there. 90-10. Go to the percentages. Every one of the cast-off samples came back 90-10. Nothing in a 50-50 range. So you start off with Maddie's blood, then you get to Kaylee's blood, then you get to the mixture, and the mixture is 90% Kaylee, which tells me that somebody assaulted Kaylee at the bottom, spilled her blood, that's why it's just her blood, and then they caught up to Kaylee and continued to assault her, and they had blood on a knife that already had Maddie's blood on it, and that's why you get the mixture. Never once do you see Xana's blood anywhere. Never once can you claim that Xana made it out of the bedroom because of a plate of food's at her door, and all the blood that starts on the inside of the threshold of Xana's room is all in that area, which is obviously the first place she was attacked. Obviously, as she set her plate down, opened the door and was attacked. And then somebody else flew in there and jumped on Ethan. Until y'all can address that, because without addressing what I'm saying right there, you cannot possibly account for the lack of blood transfer from Kaylee and Maddie into Xana and Ethan's room and vice versa. I don't know. I'm going to keep on doing it until they can address it. They address all that in a way that makes sense and that's different than what I'm explaining. I will accept it, and I won't accept it, but I will at least acknowledge that they're basing it on facts of the case. But until they can base it on facts of the case and not change Dylan's statement that you already said in your interview with Dak Shepard, that you pointed out the fact that a lot of her friends said that she wasn't drinking that night. You literally pointed that out, which lends credibility to a lot of what she's saying, even though we know there's some things that she's saying that can't be held as credible, because we now know that she lied about talking to Quinn this entire time. But you can't change her statement of who she said was in the living room playing with Murphy and change it to Xana when she didn't do that. And the fact that she wasn't drinking that night likely gives a lot more credibility to her hearing Kaylee go up the stairs and down the stairs and all that. Anyway, y'all let me know your thoughts in the comments below, because this is the one that frustrates Pop more than anything else. Please like and subscribe to this channel. Post your comments, thoughts, criticisms. Till next time, Pavarotti's out.